Okay, so get this right. What if you had to tell someone like, hey, I'm hungry, but every word, and I mean every word, had to be a palindrome?
A palindrome.
Yeah, reads the same backward and forward. So like race car, that's a classic, or madam. But imagine a whole language like that.
Wow. Yeah, a whole language.
That's what today's deep dive is all about. And we're looking at this article, The Palindrome Language Puzzle, to see if this could actually work. Could a language made entirely of palindromes, I mean, would that even be possible?
It's a really interesting idea, but I mean, at first glance, it just seems, I don't know, kind of impossible, doesn't it?
Right. Like, it's fun to play with race car and madam, but to express, like, every thought.
Yeah, every single thought.
The article points out that there just aren't that many palindromes, especially in English. So how could you possibly, have a conversation, tell a story, anything like that?
That's exactly it. The vocabulary would be so limited. And even if let's say you did have enough words,
Yeah, say you did. Yeah.
then you run into the whole issue of grammar, right? Like, how do you make a word past tense if it has to be the same backward?
Oh, that's true.
Race cars. That breaks the rule immediately.
It does.
Plurals, tenses, all of that. Natural languages depend on those little changes to words.
Right, right. So is it doomed? Is our palindromic language, like, is this whole thing just, a fun thought experiment and nothing more?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a huge challenge, but the article does bring up something pretty interesting.
Oh, what's that?
Artificial intelligence.
AI. Okay, how could AI help with this?
Well, imagine this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What if AI could, like, actually create new palindromic words?
Whoa, that's kind of trippy, like invent new words.
Yeah, and make sure they're palindromes. The article gives this example, Zibiz, and they say that means food.
Zebas. It sounds kind of alien.
I know, right? It's made up, of course,
Yeah.
but it shows you the potential.
So instead of us humans trying to like rack our brains for new palindromes, AI could just whip them up for us.
Exactly. Like, fill in all those gaps in vocabulary.
Okay, so that's word creation, but could AI also translate, like take existing languages and turn them into, palindromic equivalents?
That's a fascinating possibility. I mean, imagine a world where you could just take any sentence, plug it into some program, and boom, you get a perfect symmetrical palindromic version.
That would be pretty wild. More efficient than us trying to do it, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's just say, hypothetically, right? We do manage to create this language full of palindromes and it works. What would a culture that speaks like this even be like? Would their architecture all be symmetrical? Would their music sound the same forward and backward?
Wow, that's a great question.
It's mind-boggling.
It really makes you think. The article mentions that palindromes are often associated with, like, symbolic meanings,
Oh, like what?
like balance, harmony, even equality.
Yeah.
So maybe a culture that speaks in palindromes, maybe they would, I don't know, maybe they'd embody those concepts more deeply. It's fascinating to think about.
Yeah. So like the very structure of their language like shapes their worldview.
Exactly. It's a really interesting idea to explore.
But let's come back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
In the real world, are there any languages that, I don't know, even come close to this kind of symmetry?
You might be surprised, but yeah, there are some. Finnish, for example, they're known for these super long words, like compound words.
Oh, I've heard about those.
There's this one word, get ready for it, it means soapstone vendor.
A soapstone vendor. Okay.
It's Saipuki kaupias.
Saipukivi Kaupias.
Right, I know, it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it gives you an idea of how some languages naturally, they lean towards these longer, more complex structures, which I guess could potentially lend themselves to palindromes.
So even though that word itself isn't a palindrome, it's like in the ballpark, right? It's got that kind of like intricate symmetrical vibe.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, what about other languages? Any other examples of, I don't know, palindrome-like structures?
Well, Indonesian has this cool thing called reduplication, where they repeat words or parts of words to, like, intensify their meaning.
Oh, I see.
Not exactly a palindrome, but it gets you thinking about repetition in language.
Right,
Like,
right.
mata mata means spy. It's like a linguistic echo.
I like that, a linguistic echo. So it's not just about individual words being palindromes. It's about how languages use repetition, symmetry, all that. But what about literature? Are there, like, any famous examples of palindromes in books or poems or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. The article mentions a few. There's actually a whole palindromic novel.
A whole novel.
Yeah, it's called Satire Veritas. Over 58,000 words, all palindromes.
That is dedication. That's incredible.
Right. Talk about a linguistic puzzle.
Have you ever tried to write a palindrome yourself?
Oh, yeah, I have. It's harder than it looks.
It is, isn't it?
You're juggling letter combinations, word boundaries, and meaning all at the same time.
It's like a mental workout.
Yeah, but it's fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back to that hypothetical conversation we were imagining earlier. If we were trying to actually communicate using only palindromes, what would that even sound like?
Well, the article gives this example. Civic, noon, radar.
Okay, so very, very limited. But there is something kind of poetic about it, isn't there?
There is, yeah. It's almost like a secret code or something.
Yeah. Or a message from another dimension.
Exactly. So while a language made entirely of palindromes, it's probably not going to replace how we talk every day.
Not anytime soon, at least.
But it's still a cool idea to think about.
It is, and who knows, maybe it could have applications in other areas, like, I don't know, art or coding or something.
Oh, that's interesting. Think about it. Palindromes are all about symmetry, right?
Sure, yeah.
And that's important in a lot of fields. Music, visual art, even computer programming.
So maybe a palindromic language, or at least parts of it, could, like, find a home in those areas.
Exactly. And imagine like a piece of code that reads the same forward and backward.
Oh, that would be elegant.
Right. So even though a purely palindromic language might not be, practical for everyday conversation,
Yeah.
exploring it, just thinking about it, it opens up all these creative possibilities. It makes you think about language in a whole new way.
It does. It's a reminder that language isn't, just this fixed, unchanging thing. It's something we can play with, experiment with.
Definitely. It's flexible, it's dynamic, it's full of surprises.
And sometimes those surprises come in the form of a word that reads the same forward and backward.
Exactly. So keep those palindromes coming.
So we've been, really diving deep into this idea of a language made entirely of palindromes, but I'm curious about the palindromes themselves. Like, is there some sort of secret formula or like a trick to creating them?
Well, there's no like magic formula or anything, but there are definitely some, patterns and tricks that palindrome enthusiasts use.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, for example, certain letters like A, O, and I, they pop up in palindromes way more often because they work well in both directions.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like you're constantly trying to balance the beginning and end of the word at the same time.
Right, exactly. And that's where the real challenge comes in, right?
Yeah.
Short palindromes like mom or dad, those are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But the longer the word or phrase gets, the more complex it becomes. You're juggling letter combinations, word boundaries, and of course making sure it still, means something.
It sounds like solving one of those really tricky word puzzles.
It is.
But speaking of tricky, I remember I think I read about a palindromic poem once. Have you ever come across any particularly impressive palindromes in literature?
Oh yeah, there are. There are actually quite a few remarkable palindromic poems out there.
Really?
One that comes to mind is Damn It, I'm Mad by Dimitri Martin.
Damn it, I'm mad. Okay.
And it's not just a palindrome. It's also like a funny commentary on, how frustrating it can be to actually write one.
Oh, that's hilarious. It's like the poet is struggling with the words, right there on the page.
Exactly.
So even though we've been, really focusing on the challenges of palindromes, there's also this sense of playfulness and creativity to them, right?
Absolutely. Palindromes aren't just about, symmetry. They're about cleverness, wit, and just the sheer joy of bending language in new and unexpected ways.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that something as, I don't know, as simple as reversing a word can open up so many possibilities.
It is, yeah.
It makes you wonder what are the essential ingredients that make a language work? Could we convey complex thoughts and ideas if every word had to be a palindrome?
You've hit on a really crucial point. Thinking about a palindromic language, even if it's just a thought experiment, it forces us to re-examine our assumptions about communication. It's like a mental workout for our understanding of language,
So where do we go from here? We've explored this potential of a palindromic language, but we've also, bumped into a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah, it seems like a fully functional, purely palindromic language is, It's highly unlikely, at least, based on what we know now about linguistics and how natural languages work.
But that doesn't mean the journey was a waste of time.
Not at all.
Eh.
Even just exploring this idea,
Okay.
it can spark our curiosity. It can encourage creative thinking.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that language isn't, some fixed, unchanging thing. It's something we can play with, we can experiment with, we can challenge.
So we might not be speaking in perfect palindromes anytime soon, but it's fascinating to consider the possibilities.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe with, new advancements in artificial intelligence or a deeper understanding of the human brain,
Yeah.
we might uncover solutions to this palindrome puzzle that we haven't even, thought of yet.
That's a really intriguing thought. It seems like we've reached a natural stopping point for this part of our deep dive, but don't worry, we're not done yet. In the final part, we're going to hear some palindromes from you, our listeners. Plus, we'll finally tackle that age-old question: is a man, a plan, a canal, Panama really a palindrome? Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the show. We're wrapping up our deep dive into the world of palindromes, those words that read the same forward and backward.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? The linguistics, the culture, the sheer creativity of it all.
And now it's time to hear from you, our listeners.
Oh yeah, this is always my favorite part.
You guys sent in some truly amazing palindromes.
Yeah, a ton of great submissions.
We got everything from, those classic short ones, the ones we all know and love.
Like a race car, madam.
Yeah, exactly. But we also got some seriously intricate phrases and even sentences. Some of you even tried your hand at palindromic poetry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see the ingenuity and wordplay on display.
It shows that people are, I don't know, they're still fascinated by palindromes even today.
They are. Speaking of fascination, remember that age-old debate we promised to tackle?
Oh yeah, the Panama Canal one?
The one and only. A man, a plan, a canal, Panama. Is it really a palindrome?
The million-dollar question.
It reads the same backward and forward, but only if you ignore all the punctuation in the spaces, right?
Yeah.
So, does that count?
Well, that's where the debate comes in, you see. Some palindrome purists, they say that a true palindrome, it has to maintain its symmetry even with all the commas, the periods, the spaces, everything.
Which in this case it doesn't.
Not quite, no.
Those little punctuation marks, they kind of trip things up when you try to read it in reverse.
Yeah, they do.
So while, a man, a plan, a canal, Panama it's a fantastic example of wordplay. It's clever, it's fun. It might not meet the strictest criteria for palindrome perfection,
I think that's a fair assessment.
but I think we can all agree it's still pretty impressive.
Oh, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's that joy of language, that creativity, that ability to bend and twist words, in unexpected ways. That's what really captivates us.
Exactly. It's not always about being perfect. It's about having fun. It's about exploring the possibilities of language.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of palindromes, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Even if a language made entirely of palindromes, even if that stays in the realm of imagination,
Yeah.
the very act of exploring it, it stretches our understanding of what language can do, what it can be.
It's a reminder that language isn't static. It's constantly evolving, full of surprises, hidden possibilities.
So keep playing with words, keep experimenting, and keep those palindromes coming.
Who knows? Maybe one day we will be seeking imperfect palindromes, but until then, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.